Introduction. We live in a world saturated with performance. Social media curates every moment. Job interviews expect a perfected persona. Even casual conversations sometimes feel rehearsed. In this kind of world, the idea of being authentic can feel radical, even vulnerable. But what does it actually mean to be authentic? And what happens when we're not? This video explores 3 psychological states of being. Authentic, when your outer life aligns with your inner truth. Unauthentic, when that truth is hidden, often unconsciously, out of fear or confusion. Inauthentic, when the outer life is shaped deliberately to deceive or manipulate. You may recognize parts of yourself in all 3. That's not a flaw, that's being human. We all learn to hide, pretend, or adapt, sometimes to survive, sometimes to be loved. But the longer we stay in these false selves, the more disconnected we feel. From others, from peace, from ourselves. This isn't judgment, it's clarity. So let's take a closer look at each one, beginning with the one that often causes the most harm. Part 1. The inauthentic person. The inauthentic person wears a mask, not to protect themselves, but to control how others see them. This is the person who always says the right thing, but you can feel the emptiness behind it. They're polished, charming, engaging, even magnetic, but something doesn't add up. Inauthenticity isn't awkwardness or social anxiety, it's deliberate misrepresentation, projecting an image that hides the truth. It's not just that they lie, it's why they lie. Inauthentic people lie to get something: admiration, loyalty, power, control, approval. The mask they wear is designed for effect, not connection. 5 traits of the inauthentic person. 1. Charm without depth. They know how to make people feel good, temporarily, but it's not coming from sincerity, it's coming from calculation. They want you to like them, follow them, trust them, not because they value you, but because they benefit from your attention. 2. Persona shifting. They become whoever the room wants them to be. With one group, they're humble, with another, dominant, with another, spiritual. This isn't adaptability, it's manipulation. There's no consistent core underneath the performance. 3. Habitual lying or exaggeration. Even small stories get twisted. Achievements become inflated. Failures disappear. They lie not just to avoid consequences, but to manufacture a persona that always wins, and when confronted, they pivot, gaslight, or attack. 4. Image above integrity. To the inauthentic person, perception is everything. They will sacrifice honesty, empathy, even the people who trust them, as long as they still look good. Truth is negotiable. Optics are not. 5. Hidden agendas. Conversations aren't for connection, they're for control. Compliments aren't always compliments. Kindness often has a hook. They rarely say what they truly mean, only what advances their position. Why are they this way? The inauthentic person is often driven by deep insecurity, but that insecurity has hardened into ego. Some come from narcissistic wounds, shame so intense it becomes denial. Others grew up in environments where truth was punished, so they learned to lie to survive. And then, they just kept lying. At some point, the mask became the self, and in time they forgot there was even a difference, the damage they do. To others, inauthentic people can feel confusing, draining, even toxic. They leave others questioning their own intuition. You're being too sensitive. You misunderstood me. You're imagining things. But the truth is, you did feel something was off. You weren't being treated with real honesty. And it's not you. It's the mask. They need more than they need truth. Up next, the unauthentic person. Someone whose disconnection isn't rooted in manipulation, but in fear. Part 2. The unauthentic person. Where the inauthentic person hides behind manipulation. The unauthentic person hides behind fear. They aren't pretending to be someone else to deceive. They're just unsure if who they really are is allowed to exist. Unauthentic people often come across as agreeable, nice, adaptable, even kind, but beneath the surface, they feel disconnected from themselves. They may say yes when they mean no. They may smile while feeling hurt. They may echo the opinions of others, just to avoid conflict. They're not lying, they're surviving, and most of the time, they don't even realize they're doing it. 5 traits of the unauthentic person. 1. People-pleasing. They shape their responses based on what will keep the peace, not because they're manipulative, but because they fear rejection, disapproval, or being seen as too much. Their inner compass becomes blurry as they try to be who others want them to be. 2. Emotional withholding. They rarely say what they're really feeling. If they're upset, they downplay it. If they're excited, they may stifle it to avoid standing out. They've learned that vulnerability doesn't feel safe, so instead, they stay quiet. 3. Lack of self-trust. Decisions become difficult. They look to others for direction, validation, even identity. Not because they lack intelligence, but because they were never encouraged to trust their own voice. 4. Mimicking others. In new environments, they unconsciously adopt the language, energy, or opinions of those around them. It's not performance, it's protection. A way to blend in, to feel less exposed. But afterward, they often feel hollow or conflicted, unsure of where they went in the process. 5. Inconsistent boundaries. They want to say no, but they say yes. They want to speak up, but they shrink. Their boundaries bend under the weight of guilt, fear, or others' expectations. And afterward, they often feel resentment, not toward others, but toward themselves. What causes this? Unauthenticity is often born from early environments, where authenticity was unsafe. Maybe emotions were ignored, shamed, or punished. Maybe expressing anger led to rejection. Maybe love was conditional, only given when behavior pleased the parent, the teacher, or the peer. So the child adapts, they learn to hide, and those patterns follow them into adulthood. They may enter relationships that echo those early dynamics, giving too much, losing themselves, hoping to be accepted if they're just good enough. But at some point, exhaustion sets in, because authenticity denied is energy drained. What it feels like. The unauthentic person often feels lost, not in a dramatic, despairing way, but in a quiet, aching way. They ask, why don't I feel like myself? Why do I go along with things I don't want? Why can't I say what I really mean? They're not trying to fool anyone, they just want to be okay, to belong, to be seen, but safely. The quiet cost. Unlike inauthentic people, unauthentic ones rarely hurt others on purpose, but they do end up hurting themselves. They become strangers to their own truth. They shrink to fit. And when love does come their way, they wonder, would they still love me if I stopped performing? That's the ache of unauthenticity, the sense that your life is happening, but not from you. In the next section, we'll meet the authentic person, not perfect, not performative, but at peace with who they are, not because it's easy, but because they've done the work to remember themselves. Part 3. The authentic person. The authentic person doesn't need to perform. They don't need to manipulate, and they don't need to disappear. They simply live in alignment with who they are. That doesn't mean they never feel fear or doubt. It means they include those feelings in their self-expression, rather than hiding behind masks or silence. Authentic people aren't loud about it. They don't announce, I'm being real. You just feel it. They speak with clarity. They listen with presence. They move through life with a kind of quiet integrity. And when you're with them, something in you relaxes, because there's nothing to decode. 5 traits of the authentic person. 1. Self-awareness, without ego. They've looked inward. They've made peace with their contradictions. They know what drives them, what wounds they carry, and where they tend to fall short. but they don't lead with shame or pride. They just show up as they are. 2. Emotional honesty. They express what they feel, not as a performance, not to manipulate, but as an offering of truth. If they're hurt, they say so. If they love you, they'll show you. There's no guessing game, just sincerity. 3. Consistency. Across contexts. They are essentially the same person, at work, at home, in private and in public. They may adjust their tone or language, but their core values don't shift with the audience. They aren't actors, they're participants. 4. Integrity in action. They say what they mean, and they follow through, not always perfectly, but with intention. They know that alignment between word and action builds trust, not just with others, but with themselves. 5. Comfort with discomfort. They don't need to control every moment. They can sit with tension, with awkwardness, with disagreement, even failure. They know that truth is sometimes messy, but it's better than pretending. Where does this come from? Authenticity isn't something you're born with or without. It's a practice, a return. Most authentic people weren't always this way. They've struggled, they've masked, they've disappointed others to stop disappointing themselves. But at some point, they made a choice to live with less approval and more self-respect, to stop contorting, to start telling the truth, even if their voice shakes. Often this comes through some kind of inner work, therapy, grief, healing after betrayal, a dark night of the soul, or simply the exhaustion of living behind a mask. Authenticity begins where self-abandonment ends, what it feels like. When you're around an authentic person, you feel invited, not pushed, not judged, just safe. Safe to be honest, safe to disagree, safe to laugh or cry, without editing yourself. And within themselves, authentic people feel grounded. They don't always feel happy, but they feel real. And real is a kind of peace. Their impact on others. Authentic people create space for others to be real too. They don't dominate conversations. They deepen them. They don't avoid hard truths. They make them bearable. They don't demand perfection. They inspire presence. Being authentic isn't about being bold. It's about being available to truth, to growth, to connection. In the next section, we'll bring all three together, authentic, unauthentic, and inauthentic, to see how they contrast in real life. Sometimes the differences are subtle. Sometimes they're stark. But once you see the distinctions clearly, you'll understand. Part 4. The comparison. Now that we've looked at each type, the inauthentic, the unauthentic, and the authentic, it's time to step back and compare them side by side with real examples. Here are a few moments, small, everyday moments, and how each type might show up. Moment 1. Someone disagrees with them in conversation. Inauthentic, smiles, nods, then privately mocks the person later. They might subtly sabotage them or shift the group's opinion afterward. They might say, "No, totally, I agree," while internally they don't. Unauthentic, avoids eye contact, says nothing, maybe even agrees to avoid tension, then regrets not speaking up. They might say, "Yeah, I guess that makes sense," but internally it feels off. Authentic, acknowledges the difference with warmth and clarity. They might say, "I hear where you're coming from. I actually see it a little differently, if I can share." Moment 2. A friend oversteps their boundary. Inauthentic, plays nice, keeps score, then uses it against the friend later, when it's useful. They might say, "No worries at all." Internally, they'll regret that. Unauthentic, smiles and says it's fine, but feels unsettled or resentful. Unsure if they're even allowed to be upset, they might say, "Oh, it's okay, really?" Internally, it's not. Authentic, speaks with kindness and honesty, doesn't escalate but doesn't hide. "Hey, just to be honest, That didn't sit right with me. Can we talk about it? Moment 3. They are asked to do something they don't want to do. Inauthentic. May say no, but in a way that punishes, or says yes, then ghosts, or sabotages the task. They might say, "Of course I'll do it," but never does. Unauthentic. Says yes immediately, then overthinks for hours, feels resentful or anxious. They might say, "Sure, happy to help," while silently panicking. Authentic. Says no, respectfully and clearly, trusting that they can value themselves and be kind. "I really appreciate you asking, but I'm not able to this time." The takeaway. The authentic person lives with alignment. The unauthentic person lives with anxiety. The inauthentic person lives with strategy. And the difference is felt, even when it's not spoken. Coming up next, our closing reflection, a gentle invitation to notice these patterns in ourselves and begin returning home to truth. If you saw pieces of yourself in all 3 types, that's not a flaw, that's a mirror. We all drift, we all pretend sometimes. Sometimes we all shrink. And yes, some days we even perform. Authenticity isn't a permanent state. It's not a personality type. It's a practice, a path we return to when we realize we've wandered. The inauthentic voice says, "I need to win." The unauthentic voice says, "I need to be liked." The authentic voice says, "I need to be real." And real doesn't always feel safe. It might cost you approval. It might shake a relationship. It might reveal an old wound you've been avoiding. But it also offers something the other paths never can. Peace. There's a kind of peace that only comes from no longer editing yourself to fit the room. A quiet relief in saying, "This is me, not perfect, not polished, but true." It doesn't mean saying everything you think. It doesn't mean being unfiltered or abrupt. It means being honest, with yourself first, and then with others, tempered with kindness. It means choosing integrity over image, clarity over performance, self-trust over self-erasure. And when you live from that place, even a little, the people who matter most will find you. Not the ones who want you to shrink, not the ones who demand a mask, but the ones who recognize your voice and say, "There you are." So ask yourself gently, when am I most myself? When do I hide? And when do I shape-shift to survive? No shame, no judgment, just noticing, because noticing is how we begin to remember, and remembering is how we begin to return. Back to the self, back to truth, back to the kind of life that doesn't just look good, but feels real, from the inside out. If this resonated with you, leave a comment. Would you categorize yourself as authentic, unauthentic, or inauthentic? Are the differences more clear to you now? Leave your thoughts and experiences in the comments below.